Mm-hmm.
So, hello, this is Julie Blomquist. I'm one of the co-chairs of the user group here, and I forgot to make an opening slide deck today. So I just wanted to let you know today's lecture is on index, disable, drop, how to get rid of unused indexes. And I did want to let everybody know that we are having a SQL Saturday here in St. Louis, October 25th. Registration's at 8. I think the lectures start at 9. Again, the past summit is coming up in November. It's one of the premier SQL conferences that's over in Seattle. But certainly, please, if you want to give it a try, SQL Saturday is a one-day mini conference. It's going to be down at Cortex Midtown. It's a free event. There's costs if you want to have lunch. It's just like a $15 cost, but it's a great opportunity for a lot of tracks on development and DBA and Fabric and AI, just a lot of going on. Today we have Pamela Mooney, who's going to be speaking on indexes. So I'm going to stop sharing. And now you can start sharing, Sharon.
There. Okay, you able to hear me now? Okay. Thank you everyone for having me. My name is Pam Mooney. I lead the data services team for a local finance company here in town. I've been there for 11 years, started off straight out of school and have worked with every version of SQL Server since 2005. I now lead the team, and this was one of my last automated processes that I got to finish off just for you guys. It's called Index Disable Drop, Automated Management of Unused Indexes. So what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about the impact of index growth, how it can just crush your server and what it does to your storage. We're going to figure out how to identify and manage these unused indexes. And I will take you through the process that I wrote so that you understand why everything is there and how it does what it does. And then I'm going to demo the whole process for you. I am going to give all the scripts to Julie because this is very dependent on what databases you have. Your mileage is going to vary. You will get different results from the demo script than I did. So you're going to have to tweak that to suit yourself. But I think by practicing with it, you'll start gaining some confidence in how to manage this stuff without it turning around to haunt you. All right, understanding SQL Server index recommendations. So SQL Server comes packaged with something called the DMVs that it uses to make recommendations on your query access patterns. You've probably noticed this when you go to optimize queries, and you've probably already caught on to when it says, oh, there's a missing index and it will change your life if you only do this, that sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, and sometimes it's very misleading. In fact, if you go into the XML of the query plan, you may actually find other index recommendations in there, and you'll find typically it just gives you the first one, and maybe it's the best one and maybe not. If you just take SQL Server at its word, You're rolling the dice because indexes can hurt you as much as they help you, which is why we test, right? In the room and online, are there any people in the audience who are not DBAs in their everyday life? Okay, and what do you do?
I'm a programmer.
You're a programmer?
Yeah.
Okay, and
I'm a data engineer.
you're a data engineer. Okay, so let me explain what is happening with indexes. Indexes are essentially copies of the table. Okay, so if you have a 2-column index, you have a 2-column copy of the table. If you have what's called include columns, you may see those at times. That's just information that follows along on the page like Mary's Little Lamb. But essentially, you are talking about copies of the table that you're making. And this is why I talk about what it can do to your space, right? And why it can hurt you. Disk space can get taken up pretty quickly. I have seen 17 indexes put on a table before, and maybe 12 of them were not being used. And what that meant was every time that table was being updated, those indexes were being updated. Every time that table was updated, that the space inside that index got shifted around and messed up, and while it is somewhat of a doctrinal debate whether you should use index maintenance or not, what is nearly indisputable is you're going to be loading more data pages if you've got tons of space, right? Which means the more data pages you load, the longer your queries can take. It's going to use memory. Even if the indexes are rarely used, it's going to be a memory resource. We've already talked about what it does to writes. This is why we want to keep our indexes lean and lean. And there's an art and a science to it, right? I tell my team as a rule of thumb, I like the idea of 5-ish indexes to a table. Brent Ozar said that once, and I thought it was a good idea. I don't get rigid about it. If the index is proven to suit a need and bring value, I'm good with it. Where I see borderline duplicated indexes, I usually ask my people to consolidate them. So when you're looking at the index, the leftmost column is the first thing SQL Server is going to look at. Then the second column, then the third column. And like I said, the includes are kind of along for the ride. So if you have 2 leading columns that are the same and yet there's a third column and you know that index is getting used, why not combine them? Combine them into one and test it to see if you can meet that need and cover them without having essentially another copy of the table right there. So when we're talking about reviewing and removing, part of the review is looking for the chance to optimize where you can. People tend to be afraid of dropping indexes, and they are afraid with reason. What prompted this was years ago, before COVID, we found some indexes in a very large database that we were morally convinced were not being used. And so we dropped them because they had not been used according to the DMVs for at least a month. Turned out these indexes were used once a quarter, and when they were used, they were really needed. And lo and behold, they came up to be used a week after we dropped the index. And these are big tables, so we had to rebuild them during the workday, which hurts. So there are safeguards built into this process to give you a little bit of confidence that you're doing the right thing. But that was the lesson I learned, was understand the data access patterns where you are and use those insights to guide your decisions. A month may be plenty of time for you. 120 days was safe for me, and so that's how I wrote this. You can adjust it to suit your needs. We use automated monitoring tools. I'm sure a lot of you guys do, whether that is SolarWinds or whether it's Foglight or Datadog or whatever that looks like. We use monitoring tools that cover indexes and make recommendations so that we can factor those in as well. We use Datadog, but I have used SolarWinds. I have used Spotlight. There's good things about all of them. There's drawbacks to all of them. It's just learning to pick the best tool for the best use, really. We run safety checks before disabling our indexes, and by all means, talk to the owners of the data and say, this is what we are seeing, before you make that change, because they may say, well, stop, don't. Most of the time they don't, but every once in a while they will. And you do not want to be in the position I was in. So, all right, so how this works. There are some moving parts to this. I have a nightly job that goes out and it tracks index uses to identify unused indexes over a period of 120 days. Anything that is unused can be disabled after safety checks and testing take place. Notifications: talk to stakeholders via database mail, and it gives you 5 days to say this index is going away in 5, 4, 3, 2. Last day to change your mind. But it also records the index data. So this index has all the scripts, this process to reconstruct it if you ever need to. I have been on my local. I've been able to turn it loose. We are using it in our lower environments and looking at it for production. So, getting into the tables, the indexes to drop. I tried to name these very descriptively. These are the indexes that you have identified and have actively gone in to disable. It will record your change history, so your change number, the stakeholder that needs to be notified. It generates the scripts to create, rebuild, and drop the index. And it records rebuild dates, drop dates, and what I call a drop exception date. This defaults to 120 days before it automatically drops off the map. But if your database owner swears up and down, this can be dropped in 30 days, you can enter that in to the drop exception date and it will drop, and they'll still get the 5-day warning. Indexes to disable are the indexes that the process has found that says, hey, you should look at these. I think these are not being used. And the way we have it set up is it gets emailed to us. I give you the template to set all of this up, but I'm not going to demonstrate the email. You guys will have to fill in your own SMTP and email information for that to work for you. Index usage stores your daily index usage, and it's maintained for 6 months. I put this lookup table there because when you patch, many times you restart the instance, which loses all of the information out of the DMVs. And I wanted a place to persist it. The vendor DBs is your third-party information because you do not necessarily want to be doing this to a third-party source that now says, well, you've just voided your support. So those are the big tables. Stored procedures are used throughout to automate the process and to alert the stakeholders, to do all of our safety checks. The rebuild process is done by stored procedure. And because we're doing it this way, we have automation. It should happen the same way every time, very fast. The stored procedures. So email indexes to drop is again a template stored procedure that you will fill in, but this is the one that sends the notifications to the change submitters for 5 days saying, last chance, sanity check, change your mind or it's gone. The email unused indexes is another template stored procedure where you're going to be filling in some information, and it will email you every day if it finds indexes that have been unused for 120 days. Find indexes to disable does just what you think it does. It goes out throughout the entire instance and it identifies indexes that are eligible to go away. So what that means is no user seeks, no user scans for 120 days. Index disable is the process that disables. Index drop will drop the indexes throughout the instance that are eligible to be dropped. And we're going to go through all of this code before I actually demo it. Index rebuild will restore any disabled indexes. However, if you use index rebuild, you will not be able to use this to disable drop again, because I don't want you guys getting bitten twice. So if you go to do it again, you're on your own. You're going to need to do it manually. Populate index usage is the historical index usage data. That's what populates that table. We have some agent jobs that coordinate all of this and manage the process more or less for you. Drop indexes is just what it sounds like. It will identify anything that either meets the 120-day requirement or the drop exception date, and it will just happen when you schedule it to happen. The populate index usage is grabbing all of the index usage comprehensively and stores it for you. The unused index finder is the thing that's going to whittle down the indexes that have been unused for 120 days. So the email sprocs are in these agent jobs. Right now I have them set, I have the jobs set to end with the population piece. So if you choose to use this to email, you're going to want to stop the job at step 2 after you have made those stored procedures usable with what your configurations are.
Question.
Yes.
So all these artifacts you created, they can be used for cloud, Azure.
I have not tested it in Azure.
Okay.
So you would have to look at that, probably depending on the offering.
Okay.
Like if it's Azure SQL database, probably not. Managed instance, I imagine it would, but that's a guess.
How about column store indexes?
I do not have it for column store. And I just read that Aaron Bertrand has come out with something for readable secondaries on availability groups to track index usage. So you would, so I do not support column store and I do not support readable secondaries. Okay. So that would have to be tweaked.
Does that mean like at your work, nobody can create column store?
Well, I won't say that we don't have column store at work. I'm saying that it will not support column store. Okay. This piece will not. So column store has to be handled separately.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. What other questions so far?
What do you do for, I've been in a couple places that you have like annual processes that go on.
Mm-hmm.
So are those just excluded from this process or is that separate?
You would have to change the retention change the 120 days, or you could go into the code because this is free. I'm handing it to you as is. Another option I would consider in that instance would be to deliberately exclude those tables and indexes from the find to disable. But the process will only surface what it thinks could be disabled. It is up to a change submitter to say, I want to disable this, for you to employ that process. So the index disable process is a stored procedure, but you are firing it off.
Okay.
So if that helps, you don't ever have to fire it off for that.
All right. And from what you said, the two main benefits of doing this, and one, for you get faster processing speed. That's
You do.
And that's less storage.
It is, unused indexes tend to fall through the cracks at a lot of places.
Yeah.
And it's easy, right? Because you have a million things going on.
Yeah.
But if something puts it in your face, hey, this has not been used in like 3-4 months. Are you sure you want to keep it? And you're looking at this thing and you think, oh gosh, I better go talk to the owner of this data. This is what we're seeing. Does this make sense to you? And you're like, yeah, then you're more likely to move on it. But again, with testing and safety checks.
You restructure a database or something.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still some indexes kind of from the old way, and then you migrate them.
Right. Yeah, your access pattern.
The new.
Yeah, your access patterns may change, or they may just say, oh, you know what? That table is simply not being used anymore. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. We'll deprecate the table. I've seen that happen too. But this way, it brings it to your attention. It gives you a consistent, fast option to do something about it while scripting all of this stuff and trying to build in some safeguards for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how long did you say have it disabled for?
120 days. Or, like I said, if the owner of the data wants to deprecate it sooner, it's flexible.
But part of your process has a code so you can recreate the index.
Yes, it generates the scripts automatically to rebuild it. But, and you may not have been in the room, if you rebuild that index, you will never be able to use this again to disable it, because you don't want to get bitten twice, right? Especially if it turns out to be a large table or something. Any other questions? Okay. Let's see it. All right. So my little lab instance, I've got a database called DBA Utilities. And this is where it lives. You'll see our lookup tables there and our stored procedures. I'm going to show you these first, and then I'll show you the agent jobs and I'll demo. So there's email indexes to drop. This is one of our template stored procedures. It essentially creates a table, a couple tables, to store all of the data it's going to go out and collect. We use a little bit of dynamic SQL to go throughout the instances. And we are looking for disabled. And we certainly don't want a clustered index. Did I say we really don't want a clustered index? It's gonna put all of that into the temp table, and it's going to look for a drop exception date. And if it meets the criteria, of the drop exception date is 5 days away and the disable date's coming on, it's going to email you in tabular form. Indexes will be dropped soon. Please talk to the DBA if you need an extension. You can update that drop exception date and it will honor it. And this is the part you would fill in. That's number 1. The emailed unused indexes, same sort of thing, just takes a temp table, goes out and it says, this is what we have found that hasn't been used in the last 120 days. Again, you're just going to fill in your information here. Find indexes to disable. This is kind of step 1. Yet more dynamic SQL. It's going to go into, it's going to get information from indexes to disable. And wait a minute. Oh, I hit the wrong one. I'm sorry. Thought I hit this and I didn't. There we go. There we go. Okay, it's going to go get all the unused indexes. And I tried to call all this stuff as descriptively as I could, so it's easy to follow. It's going to say, I want to get all of this, the database name, the schema name, the table name, the index name, all the seek scans and lookup information from index usage stats. And we're going to do a few joins here, where we do not want anything unique. We do not want a primary key. We want anything that hasn't been looked at in 120 days. And it's going to talk to you as it does this. You're going to get several status messages, which I find helpful in debugging, saying, okay, so it's going to show you this is where we're starting. And then it's going to look at your vendor database and it's going to root out anything from the vendor database that it found so that we don't have any problems with our vendors. Now it's going to do a cross check to make sure that nothing is deleted unless it has not been used in the last 120 days. And then last safety check, it's going to reference the indexes to drop table and ensure we've never tried this before. And if it has, it's going to let you know. And I'll show you an example of that. Finally, it merges everything in and it says, this is what we've got. That's what, if you use the email procedure, that's the email you should get. And that is what you can take and use to say, hey, I think we have some candidates here. Index disable goes through and it builds scripts. But before it does it, it does a safety check that says, has this ever been rebuilt before? If it has been rebuilt before, it's going to unceremoniously dump you and say it was rebuilt. Sorry.
What if you process which is rebuilding indexes for maintenance and fragmentation?
Like if you're running OLA.
Yeah, an online rebuild or something for maintenance, it's a big index, so it's choosing to be a rebuild inside the new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in that case, but it's not been recorded in the table.
Oh,
So,
okay.
So we've not had a problem with that. But yeah, it's going off what's in the table if there's a rebuild date there. So unless you've got OLA recording there, you should be okay. Yeah. No, it's a good question. then it's going to go into scripting these, and I kind of started with this link and tweaked it to suit my needs, but it will get all of the data it needs to write the scripts, to create, rebuild, and drop the indexes, and record it into the table. And it will tell you, this is the status message. And then it's going to tell you, okay, I've inserted it into the indexes to drop table. Once it's inserted all the information it needs, should anything go wrong, now it's time to actually do this. It will go through and it will cursor through and essentially update indexes to drop, set the disable date to that time, and disable the indexes. And then it will show you, this is what we just did. Index drop is in a similar vein. It's going to go through and it's going to check to see what are we dropping today. It's going to go get everything that meets the criteria. It's going to put it into a temp table. So lots of dynamic SQL going on here. And it's going to update you and say, this is what we've dropped. It will update the table to say this was the date it was dropped. Probably one of the simpler ones. Index rebuild is going to just go out. It's going to update the table and say, okay, I rebuilt it on this date. This is who done it. So if you have any questions, you can go talk to them. It's going to wait a few seconds and say, okay, this is what we just re-enabled. And it's going to finish up and notify you. And then populate index usage. Pretty straightforward. It's just going to go out and get all your index usage stats for you. Agent jobs are down here. And like I said, you'll get all of this. I just said, I called it all index monitor. So let me see here. There we are. Populate the index usage table, real simple, 2 steps, all done by stored procedure. So there's not much to see here, except for to say you would arrange the schedules to suit your own windows. And if you want to fill this out right now, these guys are set to stop here. You'd want to stop it at step 2 if you're going to use that. So that's all of that. Here's where we show you how it works. So I'm going to do a little housekeeping, get us going. All right. Let's take a look at some of these tables. I remember to highlight it all. There we are. So index usage, you can see some of the stuff that my SQL Server's been going out. I don't have too many databases in this little lab environment, so it's gone out through AdventureWorks, it's gone out through DBA utilities. It's grabbing stuff for, it's been going for a while. I've just been letting this fly for a while. It grabs the index name, the type, it grabs everything. This is the everything table. The vendor DBs, I made 2 of these vendor databases. So Sandbox and Sales DB, this is my little pretend world. They're a sales database and my Sandbox, we should not see anything coming from those two that would be eligible for disabling. And then indexes to disable. Right now, we have a few candidates. These are our contenders to disable. And I have decided that I'm going to disable two of them. I'm going to disable this guy right here and this guy right here. And I'm making up an email and a change request number. But this is how it works. You just plug in the change number, who to notify, how to notify them. It will do up to 2 indexes at a time. We don't want to get crazy with this. It will work with just one. And boom. So this is how it talks to you. It says this is the index scripts, and you can look over and you can see that, yep, it's creating the index, the disable script, the rebuild script, and it's saying this is what got sent over to indexes to drop. So at this point, it's in the drop table. The process will go out nightly and say, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Right? This is the stuff that's there. You can see the change number, me, the modified date, all of the scripts that you need. There's no drop exception date because no one said anything yet about needing to drop it early. No rebuild. And this is what we just disabled. Okay. So I tried to do a good job of making it talk to you and let you know where you are so that should you have a breaking point, it's a little easier to find. Okay, so let's prove to ourselves that it worked. For the 2 indexes that we just disabled, one was in AdventureWorks, one was in Worldwide Importers, we're going to find out were any in fact disabled. And yes, they were. Now we're going to pretend that someone changed their mind and said, no, wait, stop, don't. We actually need business entity ID index. And there it is. And it tells you, you're not going to be able to disable this again. So let's prove it. Is it disabled or did it actually rebuild? It's no longer disabled.
Why?
Because we rebuilt it.
Oh, okay.
And then we're going to check the table. Did the table update with a rebuilt date? And it's going to say, there's your rebuild date.
And it's got your script there.
Yeah, the scripts stay in place. The only thing we add at this point is the rebuild date, because as long as that rebuild date's there, nothing else is happening. And I'm going to prove that to you right now. I'm going to try to disable this index again, and only this index. So this is going to do 2 things: prove that the rebuild will stop it, and also that this works with just 1 index. And there you go. Index has already been through it once. You can't do it again. All right, now we're going to add a drop exception date so that we can practice dropping the index. And let's check that drop exception date. And there it is, 10/14. Finally, we're going to drop it. And again, it talks to you. It says, there it is. This is what is dropped. And you're going to see that there's the drop date. I get this thing to resize. It's sure not wanting to cooperate. There it is. All right. And we're going to prove it worked. This thing should not exist anymore. And it doesn't. And then finally, we're going to check that table one more time. And everything you need will be there. So if you ever do need to create the index again, you're good.
Is that the same, is the index the same information that you get? Like if you're going to do a create table in SQL Server, it'll show you some of the indexes up under it.
Yeah, so I just reverted to snapshot, so all the indexes are there again. But if you were to go to, let me see here.
I know there are a lot more.
Yeah, job candidate, I think business entity.
Just go into the table and right click on it. Go create or drop and create.
Yeah, so if you go in here, this is where they would be. And it's just going in and getting a bunch of metadata and using it to dynamically generate a script.
Okay.
So what happens if someone if they just copy paste out from this output
Mm-hmm.
and rebuild one of these indexes without using your stored procedures?
If they do not use the stored procedure and that table does not get updated, it will not safeguard you. What safeguards you is the check against the table. So Julie was asking something in the same vein. If you use OLA, for instance, to maintain your indexes, it should not affect this because OLA is not updating that lookup table.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody goes and manually updates that table outside of this process and just manually puts in a rebuild date, it will absolutely affect it. So you probably want to watch the permissioning on those tables.
Yeah. I like how you have a change tracking.
Mm-hmm.
What's your ticket number? Yeah.
Yeah, what's your ticket number and who? Because I know when I was writing Drop It, the rename drop process, what prompted that was, we were going through big changes and sometimes people would say, drop these 50 tables, we swear they're not being used. And lo and behold, the next day they were wrong. And or worse, it's even worse if it's like 3 months down the line and you're like, well, who did that? Well, that was then. Who knows who did that? I wanted a place to record it so that you could reconstruct how it happened, who did it, and then say, okay, this was the change. This is how this occurred.
What's your backup? Well, first off, I don't know how large your database is, but what's your backup retention? And do you save like a monthly backup or something to where you could restore on a test server and get the table and the data back?
Right. So I think backup strategies vary by organization, but the tables should maintain for 6 months. You can increase that to suit whatever your needs are. For us, 6 months is fine. But, and I think that the indexes to drop table, I haven't checked this in a while, but I think the indexes to drop table does not have a retention on it. I think that stays. But the lookup tables flush themselves after 6 months. Otherwise, they would get unwieldy.
So on the, we swear we don't need this table, drop it.
Mhm.
I now rename the table
Yeah,
to something with a date on it
Yeah.
as a suffix,
mhm.
and that way it's out there for 30 days.
That's the way I wrote it. I actually I had a set of sanity checks. I did this at PASS a few years ago. It identifies first if it's a table. If it's a table, what foreign key constraints does it have? If it has foreign key constraints, does it use on cascade or on update delete? If it does, you will wake up in the backyard talking to Elvis. I do not deal with that. It will kick you out. It's too much risk. But if it passes all of the sanity checks and it is a table, first of all, does it exist in sysobjects because there could be typos? It will script out all the foreign key constraints and record them in a lookup table so that if you need to put the table back together again for any reason, you can. But it will rename the table. It shifts it to a to delete schema,
Oh, that's good.
renames it with a date stamp on it, and I think maybe even the change number. But it records it all in a table, and then the same process essentially goes out and looks for anything eligible to be dropped. The only gotcha with that is that child tables need to be dropped before the parent table. If not, it'll say it worked, but it didn't work because it couldn't. Yeah. Yeah, we still use that.
We should have a lecture.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it kind of goes along with this.
Yeah, I had thought at some point, like future state, I would find some way to identify child tables and make them drop first, but I never got around to it. So I'm sure it's possible. Well, what other questions do you have? All right. Well, I will get you all of the scripts and
Do you have like a GitHub site or anything that you can, or if you can get it over to Sharon and she can put it on her GitHub, then I could just post a
yeah, no, I'll make a GitHub site. I haven't done it. I haven't been coding much in the last few years, but I will.
You could get it over to Sharon, she could post it, and then I'll just post the link to the GitHub on our meeting.
Yeah, no, I probably should just do one. Yeah, I probably should. So,
But so how frequently do you see this dropping indexes? Because I know you go through a rigorous design review process before you add things. So I'm
yeah.
surprised that you're still finding indexes to drop.
So we do. We don't always make the indexes. There are other people who have abilities to make indexes and need to. Sometimes they are architecture decisions. And, if the architect is not certain of data access patterns, they will design indexes based on foreign keys. And they may hit and they may miss and come up as unused and then need to go away.
Yeah, but usually if you have an index based on a foreign key, if you're doing a delete or a lookup or something, that index is used. You're finding that sometimes it's not.
Sometimes they're not.
Oh, interesting.
Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just designed that well. Yeah.
How much has been a space saver?
It can be. It really can be, depending on the size of your table and the number of indexes. I mean, you can see the mid-sized table with way too many indexes on there, and or you can see table that has just a huge index on there that could either be optimized or just go away.
I found the performance monitor suggestions. A lot of times it's like, this is a completely covering index. Why would you do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got all the columns in it.
And I mean, depending on what monitoring tool you're using, they may be using the DMVs too. So kudos to SQL Server for taking its best guess. I mean, sometimes they are right. It's just when they aren't, it can actually make things much worse. And
a lot of people don't understand that these are just suggestions to evaluate. And
I cannot
And
overemphasize the need to
that-
test.
dev environment, test,
Yes.
do your show plans. Is it right?
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully you have an environment that's close to a one-to-one with prod, or as close as you can get, such that if you have 8 processors on prod, you've got 8 processors in that test environment. If you have half a terabyte of memory in prod, you got half a terabyte of memory there. Try to get it as close to a one-to-one and as close to a live process as you can get it so that you get realistic index stats. But no matter what, you should run a baseline, then try the index and prove to yourself that there is a significant improvement in using that index because of everything we talked about before. It is going to take up space. It is going to take up maintenance time. It needs care and feeding. So, you wouldn't bring a pet into your home unless you budgeted for it and planned for it and said, is this the right dog or cat for me? Right? You don't want to do it with indexes either.
Right, and it can slow down.
Yes, it
your
can.
Processing, your
It really
insert,
can.
update,
Mhm.
delete, it will slow down processing.
Yes.
You may need it for reporting, but your loading of your data is gonna slow down. And in financial trading, a lot of times you can't afford that.
You can't, and
It's big dollars.
I have a thing about doing analytical processing in a transactional environment. I think that's what availability groups are, where they really, really shine. But also there's a reality there. A lot of people are in that situation for either licensing reasons and budgetary reasons. They're kind of like this, right? And they have to, which makes them even more important.
I think the big lessons learned is, on our side is the developer license
Mhm.
is for development and it is free. You can't use it for production work,
No.
but it's just like enterprise and it's free for your development work. So you can have your server, like you said, that's parallel to your production one.
Mhm.
Have that, you're not paying licensing on it. You're just paying for, the memory and the storage and the CPU and everything. And you could get some really good testing done.
You can get some good testing done, and really if you have found that you have reached the tipping point where you're trying to do too much in one database, for instance, another possible option is replication, where it's with an availability group, everything must be absolutely identical on both sides. Same version, same everything. If you use transactional replication, you could use the publisher database, which is think of it as your primary, as your data input source, that's your gold source, but the replicated database as your reporting database, and that you can index to your heart's content. They do not have to be the same. It can be a solution depending on what your setup looks like, the size of the database, how much you're replicating. Some people have a real fear of replication. I have found it to be pretty solid. So just another tool in the tool belt.
I thought they kept talking about taking that away, though.
I don't,
Oh,
I've not
I've
heard
In
that.
the past.
Yeah. I think they're going to have to, before they do that, they're going to have to update a lot of internal code. I had not heard of replication being deprecated, though. I thought transactional replication was still very much a feature in use.
It is, but I've heard that they're
Mhm.
trying to get rid. I mean, this was years ago.
I wish they'd get rid of merge, but it's just my own personal. Merge replication is a bear, but
Yeah.
transactional replication is just fine.
Yeah. Well, we've had issues with it going down and
Have you?
that it wasn't stable, but I think a lot of the times that's on older SQL versions.
Could be, could be. I've worked with it since, I think the first one we put it on was a 2008 R2 instance. And we did not have problems with it. And we were using it with indexed views. We were using it with database snapshots. There are some things to know if you're going to use that. Like, for instance, if you need to reinitialize it because you've added something or taken away something, all that's got to come down before you do that. But generally speaking, it's done real well for us.
Well,
Yeah.
what about using, for your reporting example in your real-time transactions? Having the reporting one, having an ID that has only read access, and then the transactional one has read-write access.
Yeah, that's a thought too. That's a thought. I think there's a number of ways you can go about it. It depends on how real time you need your data to be. We've also used something called snapshot replication for data that doesn't have to be now. You know, maybe that data only changes once a day. And so, you know, you can set up snapshot replication to bring over everything once a day, and there it is. And you can still index for reporting purposes and meet that need.
Is that for production? So you
Mhm.
have the license. So you have the license.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, you would not do this with groups of databases. This would be database subscriber to, or publisher to subscriber. You can technically have more than one. If you do that, it's a little bit of a different setup, but I think the one-to-one is the most stable. Anything else?
Anybody have a, want to go around the room and introduce ourselves, or should I stop recording?
Yeah.
Stop the recording. You want to just